Well, good morning. I'm excited about going into the next part of anger resolution where I talk about the brain. I think it's really important that we understand how we operate. So we're working with how God's created us instead of against how God's created us. Sometimes, like I've said before, we're working really hard on a project, but we're working on the wrong thing, or we're wearing ourselves out about just by going against the grain of how God has created us to begin with. We very much have a faith brain. And that means we have the brain that science has proven that said we're always looking to better, to move ahead, to have a plan, to see what's next. If faith just keeps moving. Faith is a verb, and hope is what fuels our faith. Hope is a joyful, confident expectation of something good, is what that means in the Greek, in the Word of God. And then when we're looking at that, that's actually the fuel that we have to have for our faith. No hope, no faith in operation. And so we get our hope from hearing the Word of God. We get our hope, and you can hear that religiously, or you can hear it like I'm saying it. It's this: the Word of God is Jesus, and He is the hope in all things. And we don't need to get religion or religious to think we're developing hope. We need to have truth. And He's absolute truth, because love is the highest power, the highest level of truth. You cannot find information in some philosophy book or something like that. They might have truth mixed into it, but the highest level of truth comes through the Son of God. And He is the way, the truth, and the life. So we establish that before we get going about the brain and how we're created. We need to understand. So like I said, we're not just, coming up against the grain of how God has created us and making a mess of things in our very own brain. So one thing that we have to understand, and I'm just going to show it. You will be posting PDFs of it. But just so you know, there's a picture of the brain in our booklet on anger resolution. And this says that our brain is voice or sound activated. So if you're in a SPECT scan and they're trying to check what your brain's doing or what your thought patterns are doing or what area of your brain lights up too hot or not hot enough or whatever, they're going to say something to you because your brain is sound activated. And that's great. You know, it's activated and it records through our five senses. It is sight activated, it is smell activated, taste activated, and touch. So if you look at your five senses and we look at the fact that we're going to record our memories and everything through these five senses, we talked a little bit in the past podcasts about the fact that trauma records through all these things, but it records way too loud. And a story that was shared with me, years ago when we took something called LSI, which was Life Skills International, and it was a 60-hour abuse recovery course. The facilitator, Dr. Paul Hegstrom, had shared about a little boy whose dad had killed the mother. And what had happened is he took the little boy and just kind of shoved him onto the basement steps and locked him in the basement. And so here's this little boy. He knows something dangerous is happening. He knows this is over the top. He can hear his mother screaming. He hears just the yelling and all this kind of stuff. And he's recording all of this through his five senses extremely loud. And so he starts yelling for help. He's screaming. And then all of a sudden goes silent. And then it's silent and both parents are dead. And nobody knew about this until a neighbor decided to check on something a few days later. So you can imagine, be a little boy. I don't remember the age that he was, but he was definitely grade school. And being at this age and being shut out in the dark, locked up, can't get to your main nurturer, your caregiver. You've heard her screaming. She's dying. The dad's dying. All of this is going on and no help. And, for kids, it's a long time. Time is really extra long for them. I remember having summer vacations and thinking, man, we are off forever because we got these couple months for summer vacation. And now, when kids get out of school and I look at it, it's like you blink and summer's over. But for a child, you're recording everything many times for the first time, and you're building that foundational pathway, and that's coming in, and it's coming in extremely loud. And then you've got time in some ways coming against you because the recording of how loud that was, he stayed in shock. He stayed in that sound of the shock of everything that he heard for a couple days, like night and day. There he was on the steps. And so neighbors came in, the police found the parents and everything, and they opened the door to a child who used to talk and hear and had all those different things operating. And suddenly this child is deaf, and is very hypersensitive because the nervous system recorded everything so stinking loud that, through the screaming and everything, it just, the brain said, look, you know what? I always call it the little guy that works at the desk in the computer of your brain starts taking notes and is like, okay, this is way too much information. And this is taking up way too much space, time, and energy in my brain. And just like shutting a computer down or locking it up, that's exactly what happened. And it shut off his ability to hear. And his speech went out the window also. And it took a lot of therapy. It took a lot of things, because you can go look and, doctors could look at his brain and his, eardrums and all that. They were fine. It's just that it recorded too loud, and we hear based on, brain waves, and we see based on brain waves. It's not just the eye, it's what the brain interprets through the eye. And so when something's way over the top, way too much, it says, don't touch me. Smells become hypersensitive. The way he recorded that was hypersensitive, and so anything familiar to that. And I mean, we remember things like, grandma's farm. You'd go on her farm or whatever. You knew the smell. I could blindfold a lot of people and take them to grandma's farm and say, remember this place? They'd know by the smell. They'd know by the baking bread. They'd know by that certain, mothballs that a lot of the elderly people had or whatever that was like, that smells like grandma's house. And so when you record things and it's extremely loud like that, and the smell of everything is going to be locked in, the taste of everything is going to be locked in, how the lack of touch, and then feeling terrible about even being touched, all of that was locked in. So it took quite some time for this little boy to gain his hearing back and the ability to look and see things, because it was so over the top, dramatic, traumatic, that his systems just shut down. And it was a protective agent for his systems to say, look, we're not going to stay attached to this at the moment and continue to record at this level. I can't keep it up. And so the brain will protect who you are, and it'll just shut some things off. So people have brought up to me, missing areas of their life or missing memories. Like they'll remember a certain thing and then it just blacks out after that. There are some people that have gone through enough trauma in their life that if they get angry, if they have emotion, since everything was recorded so loud in the past, now suddenly they can't allow themselves to feel anything great of emotion or see or, be familiar with any of that stuff. It'll trigger them in such a way they black out. And blackout is definitely real. In anger resolution, sometimes people will start getting angry and they beat somebody up, and literally it looks to everyone else like, oh, they're with the program. They're right there beating that person up. We saw the whole thing. They're lying. But literally the person will say, I blacked out. I don't remember a detail of what happened. The subconscious will keep recording everything, but it will follow through on the assignment of whatever, you're angry about, or try to resolve that or whatever. But those areas in the brain that have been so traumatized in the past, it'll just black out. And it's a for real deal. Now you add alcohol to that. Some people will drink enough that, or different drugs or whatever, that when they hit the emotional thing, it's too much. It's overload on the brain. There's too much meth. There's too much whatever. Well, anything's too much for that. But I mean, it's to the point where the brain goes, you just overloaded my whole entire nervous system. It'll just shut you down. And you'll end up doing something really dumb or really hurtful, really scary. And in the end, you might even go to jail for something you can't remember because you blacked out. So I think it's important that we understand that our brain is very much like a computer. God created us with this interface of this gray matter, to activate and to record and to relate and to have all those operations, because it's one of those things that's between your soul and your spirit, and then communicates with your body. So we have to have this electrical wiring mass of stuff in our head, to be able to house this spiritual being that's inside this body. My body's dirt and water. My soul is information. It's my will. It's my chooser. It's where my emotional state is. But the main base of who I am is spiritual, and that's why if you go to a funeral, which all of us had, eventually will be at a funeral, and many times you'll go past the casket and you're aware. People will say, well, that's grandma or that's grandpa or whatever, and you're aware that that's them, but there's no real, like, that doesn't look like them. And I don't care what the mortician does or whatever, some people will even say they did a great job on that person. Like, well, I don't know, he still looks dead to me. I'm pretty blunt about that, because death really is the absence of life, and life is the spirit. And the spirit was housed in and fed into every cell, and it shows on the face. It shows in the color. It shows that there's life still in the body. Even the body itself will start to retract back. It's almost like it's caving into itself or whatever, because there's no spirit there. And science can't make that stop. You can do the preservation like they did in the Egyptian times or whatever, but it still continues to decay because there's no life source. Like, the Bible talks about when God breathed into the dirt and water for Adam and to create him, he ruached, which is the word, the Hebrew word, like the breath of God went into him. And God is life. God is truth. God's the way. He is everything that keeps us here in the system, and it gives life to the body. Without the body, we can't stay here. And need to know that, because this is something that happens a lot in trauma that we need to understand. If something happens to us that's so traumatic that it's almost like it's driving our spirit out of our body. Many times people have out of body experiences. The trauma is so great. It's very common for children who have been molested or raped or attacked or just tortured, any of those types of things, to, as they're, a teenager or whatever, they'll be sleeping and suddenly they're outside their body, watching their body sleeping with this desperate feeling of, I need to get back in. Well, when they tell people that then right away, that's like, oh no, that's a whole nother level of crazy. No, it's an actual happening where the body is saying, I don't know if I can house life in it. This thing is so traumatic, it's driving me out. So even recalling the memory will make it feel like you're being driven out of your own body. Panic attacks are way on the spectrum, very low level, even though they feel like you're dying, compared to leaving your body because you're at that level of stress. And somewhere in there is blacking out. So I'm not giving you all the technical terms and all that kind of stuff. I just know as I'm talking and people are watching this, they're like, yep, that happened to me. Yep, that's exactly. Some people have a fear of sleeping because they don't know if they're just going to feel like they're outside their body. And then they'll say to themselves, I'm hallucinating. Well, some people do hallucinate, but some people are really experiencing that out of body experience. And it's very scary. And so it's the trauma to itself was recorded through your five senses. It was recorded loud. I don't know any trauma that's recorded soft and soothing and wonderful. It's recorded loud. It shocks your whole system. This is what shock looks like. It literally is all your recordings, your five senses are like, what? Because it's way over the top, anything you've ever felt, or it's way past the boundaries of what keeps you alive. Remember, the spirit's in the body, keeping the body alive. Well, anything that comes against it in a way that says, I'm going to drive you out, or I'm going to take you over, or I'm taking you to a level of pain that you now are not going to understand or be able to handle. It's a way of like, the feeling is I'm being driven right out of my body. And the whole thing that goes through the brain is like, I'm I'm dying. It's where the whole thing, people will say, like if you were hit your brakes, right? And then people will say, I hit my brakes and I almost hit that semi. My whole life flashed before my eyes. Well, actually, your whole life did not. That's a lot of information, especially if you're my age. It would take a bit for my whole life to go through the recording. But it's a saying that really is revealing the important parts of life. Like all of a sudden you almost hit a semi and you see, um, there's a feeling like I'll never see my child again, or I got to be here for this or whatever. It's very slow motion. Everything is being recorded so loud. It's almost like where they show the Matrix, there's that slow feeling. At the same things are happening fast at the same time. Well, that's how it can feel and interpret to the body. We're recording something that's way beyond our pay grade. And it's like that part is like, whoa, what is happening? Everything slows down and everything that is taking place is really fast. So, and another example of like in a car accident situation, the person who saw the accident, it was so fast. It was like, boom, everything falls apart, ambulance are coming or whatever. And even for that person, if they're shocked, it'll slow it down. But the average person just seeing, if you saw a car accident filmed on TV, it's just like they drive together, boom, there's an accident and it's over. For the person inside the car, when they even share this story, they'll be like, and then I remember I put my hand on the stick shift and I didn't know what I was going to do. I saw that person coming and then it was like everything slowed down and I was trying to hit the brakes, but I felt like I couldn't breathe. I mean, all the details of everything that walked right up to that is that opposite thing. It's happening within seconds. But the way that you'll see it, your brain will interpret like, this is way loud. This is way too much. It'll interpret like, okay, this is taking a bit and now I'm about to hit this truck or it's about to hit me. And then even the things that you see, the truck hits you, the window shattering, the glass coming out of one window, you turn your head, everything's recorded very much boom. And someone watching it was over with. It was just, they saw it, it was over with. And it's important that we need to know that, because if we're recording that heightened, and then we think, some of these things are at the base of our first feelings, because remember, anger resolution, anger says, I want something to stop. It also says, there's an underlying emotion that goes with it. What you felt during that slow down feeling, that I can remember every detail. I can remember what that person's facial expressions look like. Your body interpreted all that. Your brain interpreted all that. And it came out as a result. And it left a feeling inside of you. And if that feeling gets triggered, now that same sensation will be relived. We have to understand that it's like things that we don't have closure on, we actually relive them. And so when people say, don't trigger me, well, triggers are real. Those are the things we don't want to relive, but somehow something reminded us of that. And we come into the reality, our body, even if you can't remember consciously every detail, your body remembers the sensation. So you'll get a sensation in your body of loss of control, of being pushed, of the fear of death. I mean, all of these different things. So anything, whether it's you being yelled at to you're being run off the road by a semi. I mean, these are spectrums of how we record, and each person records differently. There are people who can be in an accident and then laugh about it later, like, whoo, that was intense. I made it out of that one. That was crazy, But for another person who's been through previous traumas and felt like at any time Their life could be taken. They had losses that happened suddenly, things like that. They're remembering this in a little bit different detail. They're not really wanting to get back in their car, and there's nothing funny about it. So everybody goes through these things differently. So I could have a class with 10 people in it, and they all share the same happening for them, same car accident, same, rape, same type of thing where it was like my story is very similar. But each one of them, their interpretation of that story is going to be at different degrees. That's why it's emotional rape to a person if you say, well, you shouldn't feel that way. You need to build a bridge and get over it. Like, how many times are you going to cry? Well, you're not in their head, and you were not in their recording. And so how we record things, how it came in through our five senses, especially if something was related to physical pain. I mean, it's, got all the scary stuff that leads up to it, but, you're in a car accident and suddenly the door comes in and squishes into your rib cage and you hear your ribs crack. That's going to record at a different level because you have physical pain and your whole nervous system now is trying to translate all that. So, how people have mentioned to me that, it could be years later, they're still having dreams of falling and they know they're going to die. And then suddenly they'll wake up before they hit the ground, or someone's chasing them and they can't get away and everything goes in slow motion. And then it's so real that it takes them hours to go back to sleep and they're afraid they're going to have that dream again. But it's the same occurring feeling. Those feelings are the interpretation of whatever has happened to you. They come out of that. It's really saying you have no control. Anytime something bad could happen to you, you can't get away from it. It could happen to you. Where are you going to go? It's an anxiety type of thing where the brain is saying, with everything the way we recorded it, I still can't figure it out. I don't know how to unpack that and put it away. It's very important that we have empathy for the person. It's not all about feeling sorry for them. I could feel sorry for a person, but empathy really is like, God, give me a way to feel what they feel. That's like, I can relate, where it's different. Like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. Sorrow is something, when someone passes away, I'm sorry you lost your grandma or something like that. Well, that doesn't mean you're feeling what that person's feeling. Now, you don't have to feel what they're feeling to help them out, but people know when you have true empathy or not. Like there is a level of like, I get you. And a part of our brain, the heat of our brain from these loud recordings, it literally heats up the brain, the emotional state. And whenever it's heated, you can't think. It will trump the top part of your brain where you literally can't think. Your frontal lobes are there to send information. The bottom part of your brain, that emotional state, says, I'm just lit. I'm hot. I can't figure anything out. And then people will try to help you by asking you questions. Well, what are you going to do now? And how's that going to work? You can't think when that thing is lit. And it takes an empathetic person. It takes a person with the love of God to be able to just reset by not giving answers, by not asking questions, just to be able to say, let's calm down. We need to calm down. So it's different than saying when someone's throwing a temper tantrum or they're using their anger to feel like they got to protect yourself. You need to calm down. Well, now you're going to make them really mad. I'm talking about the kind of calm down that it's like, I'm right here. It's okay. Let's just breathe. We need to just take a breath and calm down. It's very, very important because they're not going to problem solve anything. They're not going to control their temper. They're not going to do anything until they feel heard and feel safe. So much of who we are and what we do, it revolves around safety. So if you try to imagine what heaven's like, there's not one unsafe thing there. Like, we are safe all the time. You can't die there, so you could jump off a cliff if you wanted to, and you're not going to die. There's nothing to fear. You're in the presence of absolute love, where we have this world separating us from absolute love, and God has given us a way to get back to Him through forgiveness of sin, through just inviting Him into our life and saying, God, I want to serve you. I want to see what heaven's like here on the earth. It won't be like when you leave and you go to heaven, but it will be the starting point where you can see his love and you can see, and understand who he is. And that's where we get the peace that passes all understanding, that keeps our heart and our mind in Christ Jesus, in his way of thinking, which is absolute truth. And fear is based in lies. So, there's something that we have to get out of this podcast, and that is just remember everything that got recorded through your five senses. So your body has a sensation, your hearing translates a sensation. This is why if you've been yelled at, people don't like if somebody starts to raise their voice. It's like, oh, it'll hit them a certain way. Just the eyebrows down and just having a scowl, and they start to interpret you or see you differently, even if you're not really angry. It's like they're going to interpret that. It starts to light up the brain in a way where it's going to shut down your cognitive thinking. You're not going to be mindful. You're not going to be able to slow everything down and go, well, here's what's really going on. You'll not be able to interpret what's really happening because you're feeling it through the filter of how you recorded everything. And when you recorded it, it was loud. So we're going to continue talking about the recordings and how to calm those systems down. Because yes, we've talked about, how we were tempered when we were a child, and we've talked about and had to look at, self-evaluation and what we look at when we're starting to get angry. What do we look like? What is the thing that leads us into that anger that everyone's saying, whoa, she's ticked off now, or whatever it is. What do we even look like when that happens? And so then we have to look at the soul with your mind, your will, and your emotions. How did everything record for that person? How are they seeing it now? Is it loud right now? People that start crying when they're trying to, and I'm not talking about manipulative cry. I'll have them in class or whatever, and all of a sudden they're starting to tap into how loud this thing really is. But they're not feeling threatened because we've given them safety. All of a sudden they're able to tap the emotions that they never got to process, and they may start crying. That's the last thing you want to do, is to threaten that person or tell them, stop crying. You don't need to cry over this, or, you're just whatever. It's a way of jackknifing their ability to process something they've never unpacked before. And they need to feel those feelings, and those feelings are real to them. If they're not real to you, okay, but they're real to them. And to tell somebody you shouldn't feel that way is emotional rape, because they already do. And if you already feel some way, you shouldn't feel wrong just because you have feelings. They're real to you. And working through how to look at something differently is totally different than saying you shouldn't feel that way. So know this, that we record everything through our five senses. Even as I'm talking to you right now, you've recorded the color of the carpet out of the corner of your eye, the tone of my voice if it went up and down, how you feel in the chair you're sitting in. Are you cold? Do you need a blanket? I mean, all of that's being recorded as you're focusing on a main thing. Your subconscious picks up all the rest of the things. And even things we've blacked out on, you can tap those memories. They're still in there. Things that were so loud that we just blacked out. Okay, well, the memory is still in there. You're like, oh, good. I don't remember that. The sensation will show up. That's proof to you that when you're in certain situations, the sensation will show up. And the next thing you know, you are feeling something in your whole body that your cognitive isn't able to pull out of your subconscious. What is that memory? Why am I feeling this way? I feel threatened. I feel pushed. I feel scared. I feel ashamed. And nothing is happening in the now that lines up with the whole fact that I'm feeling these things. So it can make you feel crazy. But just know that's your brain protecting you from those past memories, because they were recorded at a time in your life that it said, that is way too much information. And I don't want to recall that ever again. But the sensation still stays, the filing still stays in the subconscious. And if anything triggers it, you will have those feelings in your body. So we need to understand, to work with people who are hurting, they're feeling something, right? And sometimes it's okay to let them relive that. Sometimes it's okay to give permission to feel in a safe setting where we can learn how to unpack something and put it away. Or sometimes even God will say, just throw it out. And so we're going to continue on the next podcast talking about our brain, because the point of this is to understand how we work, how we operate. It's the things that we can understand that we can handle, and the things we don't understand that drive us crazy.